It was just 13 states. It was not the entire United States, but 13 states told the mighty Great Britain that we don't have a representative at the UK government. And if they don't have a representative at the UK government, then UK government doesn't have any right over the United States. And that was the philosophy. 13 states stood for that freedom. And they won. So Southern Cameroon is not an exceptional case in this scenario. Southern Cameroon is not an exception. By then there was no United Nations at the time. There wasn't United Nations. But today, the United States is more stronger than any other nations on the planet because they knew what they won, they knew what they were fighting for, and they acquired what they fight for. So Southern Cameroon is not an isolated case. For some of you that may compare, I heard from Equinox News today by one individual, I don't know whatever his name was. I was listening to these individuals from Equinox TV. He compared the people of Southern Cameroon with the Biafra. You see, that is the dumbest to see with this Francophone speaking. That's the dumbest to see with this Francophone speaking. The Francophones are so dumb that you can't even understand who they are. Because they can't even know their own personal history. Their own history, they were deprived by the power that be in La Republique, deprived the Francophones on the true history. And so they knew nothing. Because they knew nothing, their mindset is blocked. I can see an analyst of the French speaking in Equinox TV saying that compare the case of Southern Cameroon and that of the Biafra. So that is to give you the clue that they are clueless of the fundamental question of what is Southern Cameroon. Because if they knew, then that particular individual wouldn't have made that stupid statement that the Southern Cameroon compares Southern Cameroon with the Biafran case. I am here to deny that the Southern Cameroon is not equivalent to the Biafran case. And he gives further analysis that many citizens of Igbos were lost their lives in the 60s or 50s or whatever in the 70s that were attempt to fight. And that is why that many citizens of Southern Cameroon are going to lose their life equally as the Igbo did during the Biafra War. But I am here to remind that particular individual analyst at the Equinox that the Southern Cameroon is not equivalent to the case of the Nigerian Biafra, and that the Igbos are not the same as the Southern Cameroon questions. So there are two identical different case scenario, and thereby portray it over Equinox rule. That gives the bluntness of poor judgment of the Francophone speaking. I am not, because they were never taught the reality. Since they were never taught the reality, that is why the Francophone can go over the Equinox TV and give wrong analysis about the Southern Cameroon. That individual on Equinox TV says the Southern Cameroon will be killed like the Igbos in the Biafra seeking for independence. That is a totally bogus. When the British administering authority in the 60s deposited a document pertaining to Nigeria, and at the same time, the British administering authority was managing Southern Cameroon. So when the document presented to the United Nations, it was about Nigeria. Biafra was part of Nigeria in that document. Biafra was part of the integrity of Nigeria in the 60s when that document was presented at the United Nations for validation, following Article 15, 14, 76B of decolonizations. So Biafra was part of that territory. So that doesn't mean that Biafra cannot fight for their independence. When there is evidence of that, there is a manipulation, there is a fraud, there is injustice, there is massive killing of citizens of the Biafra, then they have the right to petition the United Nations that there is injustice going on and that they are requesting for a revision of Nigerian territorial integrity in which it was decided in 1960. So the United Nations has a choice to decide whether those territorial integrity that they included in the 1960s about Nigeria, is it worth to revisit and see what this argument is presented. That is a scenario, a typical scenario case that can be argued at the International Court of Justice, at the United Nations headquarters here in the United States, that the decisions in the 1960s about the territorial integrity of Nigeria need to be revisited. And that since it needs to be revisited, the United Nations has the choice. And it's stated at the United Nations document that if there is ample evidence of atrocity perpetrated and by the Hausas, then they have to revisit, because the United Nations created Nigeria. So on the question of Southern Cameroon and the neighboring country La Republique, it's not the same as the Biafra, according to the stupid guy on Equinox TV in his poor judgment and analysis. When La Republique was presented at the United Nations in 1960 by the French administering authority, it was French speaking. It was La Republique du Cameroun. At the United Nations headquarters, right now as I'm speaking, is La Republique du Cameroun. There is nothing as Cameroon. That's just a fraudulent name that I use. There is La Republique du Cameroun. That is the one is found at the United Nations headquarters in territory. That is why you see why in 2010 they presented the two maps to La Republique under the United Nations Secretary General, Kofi Annan. So Kofi Annan is a part of the complicity theory of France and La Republique plotted the death of Kofi Annan because he stands for the truth. Let's look. How did Kofi Annan came to the head of the United Nations? Former United Nations Secretary General Brutus Ghali was an Egyptian. He was the Secretary General at the United Nations, Brutus Ghali. He was the chief architect of corruption, just as the current Secretary General at the United Nations. Brutus Ghali was the architect of corruption. So United States knew that Brutus Ghali was not a correct person to be at the helm of the United Nations. And the United States saw Kofi Annan as the legitimate valid person. Because the mandate of the United Nations required that an Africa must be the helm of the United Nations. And because of that, the African mandate has not expired. So they need another African to head that United Nations. And guess who? That's when Kofi Annan became and was backed by the United States. So when Kofi Annan came to the helm of the United Nations, he saw the injustice that was going on at the United Nations. And that is why his term of office was about to expire. And he presented in 2010 the two maps of La Republique and Southern Cameroon territory to the neighboring country president, La Republique du Cameroun. It was not by coincidence. It was a fact to make La Republique know that according to the United Nations headquarters, they recognize two nations, La Republique and Southern Cameroon. So in United Nations headquarters, they know of La Republique and the Southern Cameroon. So those are the two territories, two documents found at the United Nations headquarters. And that was why Kofi Annan presented that map in 2010 to La Republique president. And guess what happens? They start plotting the death of Kofi Annan. They start plotting the death of Kofi Annan. Kofi Annan, France knew that that scenario that presented to Paul Biya was a threat to France consuming the oil refinery in Victoria, was to bring the light to the understanding to Paul Biya that you are not a valid control of these two territories. We still recognize that Southern Cameroon and the Republic. So in the case, you need to be aware of this fact. And guess what happened? France and complicity of La Republique du Cameroun caused the death of Kofi Annan. Now he's gone. Now we have this hell that is called Antonio Guterres, that is at the helm of the United Nations, the most corrupted individual we have ever had on this planet. So now you can see that in 1961, when the document was presented by the UK administering authority, it presents Southern Cameroon and not Nigeria. despite the fact that they were administering two territories. They understand. That is why British are so smart. At times, we're wondering their mental capability. Because when they didn't present Nigeria and La Republique and Southern Cameroon. They did not present Nigeria and Southern Cameroon, despite the fact that they were the administering authority. They should have done so. They should have present Southern Cameroon and Nigeria together. They didn't because they understand the fundamental law. So they didn't. So they present Nigeria in 1960, and in 1961 they present Southern Cameroon. And so Kofi Annan in 2010 validated that philosophy. So Paul Biya shouldn't have carried any single gunshot in Southern Cameroon territory. They should have asked the citizens of Southern Cameroon what do they want and discuss on the crisis. Of course, we have some of our brothers and sisters that are being held in Kondenge without bail. La Republique has no prerogative, any right or privilege to put any citizen of Southern Cameroon in La Republique Kondenge house. We have them. They're all dying. You have one of our brilliant journalists, Wazi, that was deliberately killed 9 months later, and none of the citizens were aware that he was dead. They thought he was still in jail. Meanwhile, he had been killed by La Republique du Cameroun. I am so amazed why the United Nations is still asking La Republique to bring dialogue. I am quite amazed why United Nations is still asking La Republique to bring dialogue. On what grounds does La Republique have to bring dialogue? United Nations need to recognize the document that is specified on the United Nations headquarters in New York. That this is the document that I recognize, and that this document is valid, and that La Republique need to step out of Southern Cameroon, release all the citizens of Southern Cameroon, let them go back to their territory, and let La Republique go back to their territory. And then we can meet somewhere and decide whether do we really love to live together. That should be the beginning of, that should be the harmony of debate. Release all citizens of Southern Cameroon, allow them back to Southern Cameroon territory. All citizens of La Republique back to La Republique. And once those are being accomplished, now we can decide whether is it worth it that we can live together. And that is to validate